This video is addressing this peculiar situation where you have developed your competence in certain areas. You've taken the time to focus and to engage the world meaningfully, to do your best to develop your potential in different areas. And yet, life itself just seems to be corroding around you, that you can't seem to get a grip on reality because all these extraneous circumstances continue to impose themselves in a way that is hard to fathom and navigate. My name's Dr. Ryan Holsapple. I have a PhD in psychology. In this video, I talk about what to do when life is out of our control. When you feel like everything is crumbling around you, you're facing financial pressures, you're facing relational pressures, you're facing professional issues that are just far beyond your control. How do you show up? And if you're new to this channel, I've been documenting my experience as somebody who has over a decade of training in psychology, experience working with clients, and I'm a researcher. I publish papers in psychology, and I've been documenting my process of finding my spiritual faith in Christ and becoming an Orthodox Christian. Christ grabbed a hold of my heart. It was a very compelling and beautiful transformation that was strengthened as I faced crisis in my own life. And now what I'm doing is I'm bringing together my experience in psychology with my newfound spiritual faith, and I'm offering to you something that might be useful in your life or in those of your loved ones' lives, that we can do so much when we feel like things are out of control, but it might not be what you think. Take a moment and think about something. How many times have you found yourself absolutely stressed because you feel that your identity is being challenged by circumstances that are out of your control? For example, you're dealing with pressures socially, financially, health pressures, crisis in your life. And there are all these factors that are out of your control, all these things that you can't seem to get a grasp on, and that you feel like you're just drowning in the midst of it all, trying to figure out, how do I engage with my life and the world in a way that is meaningful and competent while I am somewhat drowning in the uncertainty and the lack of control that is generated by these external factors. I don't care if it's a healthcare crisis, if it's a family issue, if it's a professional crisis, it doesn't matter. There are times in life where we are faced with things that are just too much for us to control. And that is what it means to be a humble human being. After all, we are not God. There are many things which happen around us that are just entirely outside of our ability to influence. So what do you do when you're in that situation? Because as a human being, we also have the need to meaningfully engage our environment. And as I trained in psychology, one of the things I learned early on is that meaning is in the interaction. It's not just in the analysis of what we do, but the meaning is in the engagement, the embodied enactment with the world, where you are exercising competence that you have worked hard to achieve through engaging with your particular mode of expertise. What that looks like is going to be different for each human being. If you're an engineer, it's going to look like you being in the zone while you're engineering. If you're an artist, it's going to look like you being in the zone while you're doing art. Now, obviously, I don't want to limit this conversation to only professional matters, because this idea of competence and interaction reaches into our relationships as well. A good relationship, whether it's a marriage or a parental relationship or a friendship, a good relationship is practiced. It's not just happening automatically. We have to work on our relationships. That's why marriage is hard work. We have to do our part to clean house, to look at how can we improve? How can we be a better experience for the other person? How can we serve the other person? How can we allow ourselves to show up for that person in a way that their needs are met and that also feels authentic to us, that we're able to sustain a mutually beneficial relationship? And that takes practice. I remember when my wife and I first met, and we had been together after that for several years, but we had a lot of ups and downs where we had to learn how to show up for each other and be mature human beings, because we met when we were both just teenagers. And so the point is that things worth having don't just happen. We have to work at them. And a lot of times when we get frustrated, it's because we're being victims. We think that the world owes something to us. We have entitlement and victimhood. We think the world owes something to us, and then we identify as being treated unfairly, and other people should do better. But we often don't look at how we can do better and how we can show up for others better. Like Christ himself says, why are you pointing out the speck in your brother's eye when there is a beam in your own eye? The point is that there's always work to be done on ourselves. So as we practice, we become more competent. It doesn't matter what it's in. Practice leads to more competence if we focus intensely. Now, that is a requirement of being a fulfilled human being, is learning forms of focus and becoming competent at things that are meaningful and rewarding. A lot of times people drift into a depression because they're not engaging in forms that they're competent in. And many people don't take the time to develop their potential in certain areas, which leads to sort of a nihilism where they feel like ambivalent and life is meaningless, so to speak. But this video is addressing this peculiar situation where you have developed your competence in certain areas. You've taken the time to focus and to engage the world meaningfully, and to do your best to develop your potential in different areas. And yet, life itself just seems to be corroding around you, that you can't seem to get a grip on reality because all these extraneous circumstances continue to impose themselves in a way that is hard to fathom and navigate. I'll use myself as an example. Many of you who watch my YouTube channel regularly, you know that in 2022, my wife, Victoria, became bedbound with a severe neuroimmunological disease. She has like 12 different complex diagnostic issues, which I'm not going to go into. But she's been bedbound for 4 years now. And I could take that and I could say, oh, poor me, I'm a victim and this is so unfair, right? Which has been tempting at times. But what I try to do is just show up and make sure she has her needs met. And it's put an incredible amount of stress on us as a family unit, right? Because I'm responsible for all of her care. And I don't always have enough help. And I can't control the circumstances around the healthcare infrastructure in our present society and in our local care resources, right? I can't control that. So many things have happened around that situation that have made it impossible for me to engage at the level in which I want to engage. It feels as if my ability to practice that competence that I was talking to you about has been like crushed, right? But here's the key to all that. How do I level up here? There was this prayer when I was getting sober, because I struggled with addiction as a teenager. I've been sober for over 14 years now. I think I've been sober for 16 years, thereabouts. There was a prayer that we did in the 12-step meetings. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, if you listen to that prayer, it has baked within it the comments on competence and engagement and focus that I've already mentioned. The courage to change the things I can. That involves the ability to meaningfully interact with an environment and exercise my will in intentional ways. So yeah, there's all the things I can't control, but what can I do? Well, I can show up and be the best possible husband and caregiver. I can work on making these videos, and hopefully they exercise some level of competence that is not just useful to me, but more importantly, useful to you and to those that are watching. I can transfigure my understanding of meaningful engagement so that it does not just depend on how I can exercise my ability to interact with matter. I can move the world around and do things in ways that I want to do. But I can turn it into a spiritual form of competence practice, as they say, ascesis, a spiritual athleticism, where my life is not just bound up in what results I can achieve, but my life is now bound up in how I can surrender the process to the Creator, to spiritual processes that are beyond me, and how that can now become another form of competence practice. In some sense, I sublimate my worldly engagement and turn it into a spiritual form of engagement. All of these issues that are outside of my control are opportunities for spiritual maturation. All of these pain points within myself are opportunities for spiritual growth. That the world is not the primary issue. It's my ability to realize that there is a heavenly kingdom that is not of this world, that's where true fulfillment is. And if I am challenged, then I ought to rejoice. I have the opportunity to rejoice because now I have an opportunity to develop my spiritual competence. Because so often my spiritual life is about letting go of those things that I can't control and allowing grace to come in. So if you're one of those people who has been challenged by all these external circumstances and feeling frustrated by your inability to control certain things, the invitation that I'm learning in my own life, stubbornly so, is to be a creative, process-oriented human being that allows obstacles to be turned into opportunities and allows what seems to be curses to turn into the blessings of life. When I was baptized into the Orthodox Church, I took the name Joseph. And my patron saint is Joseph the All-Comely. And one of the things that he said in his terribly challenging life, because he was sold into slavery by his own brothers before he was glorified and overcame many challenges. He was sold into slavery, he was put into prison, but eventually through all those challenges, he was faithful to God, and eventually he became second in command of all of Egypt. And the distinct thing about Joseph is no matter what was happening around him, he maintained faith and dignity and didn't complain and made the best out of each situation. So when he was a slave, he was the best of slaves, and he was put in command of all of his master's house because he was so competent. See, he exercised maximal competence in his environment. When he was put into prison, he maintained a great attitude, and God blessed everything he did, and he was put in charge of all the orders of the prison by the prison warden. He was competent. When he was put into Pharaoh's council, he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams and was able to help Pharaoh prepare for a massive famine that was impending in years to come, so that the people would be cared for and that the kingdom would be sustained. He was competent, but not only was he competent, he allowed grace to operate in his life because there were so many things that he couldn't control that God was able to intervene on, and he was able to cooperate with God's grace synergistically. Now, that doesn't work if he's keeping track and trying to control results and saying, well, I don't really like how God's intervening here, so therefore, I'm going to be more self-willed and I'm going to interfere with God's grace by shutting myself off from it, becoming stubborn, resentful, and angry. That's not how it worked. But one of the things he said to his brothers, whom he forgave, was, what you did to me, you meant for evil, but God meant it for good. And so St. Joseph had this implacable ability to turn curses into blessings and to realize that obstacles are opportunities and that we have the opportunity to grow and change and become, and what synchronicities and serendipities will be used by God through our sufferings to turn into grace's rewards and fulfillment. So I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I know that if I follow the process faithfully, God will care for me, and that I just need to show up and exercise my will one day at a time, and hopefully that will be given to God so that what I do in my life is to serve God and to serve my neighbor, not just to serve me. And that to me allows an unconditional meaning to permeate our entire world that is not based on us being able to control things, but is based on how we respond to life regardless of what we can and cannot control. And to me, there's an excitement that comes with that because I all of a sudden do not have to be dejected about not getting my way because it's no longer about my control. It's about the process. And all the best performers in the world, in any sport, in any business, in any enterprise, music, they are not results oriented. Think about the seeming contradiction in that. They are the best performers, yet they are not results oriented. They are process oriented. Every day is a new day to what? Practice. Praxis is key. And those who fall in love with the process of practice and letting go of results ironically achieve the best results because they attain a state of flow and meaningful engagement. And so I love how St. Joseph, no matter what was happening around him, he was in a state of meaningful engagement. Okay, I'm a slave, can't control that, but I'm going to meaningfully engage this part of what God's given me, what God has put in front of me. And that gets rewarded. So this mindset of victimhood and entitlement is dangerous and it's corrosive to meaning and it leads to nihilism. And I must root it out and pull it out of myself like a weed and continue to focus on how can I be meaningfully engaged today, not tomorrow, not the next week, not thinking about how I could have done better yesterday. No, how can I today be the most meaningfully engaged person possible? That's how I'm going to make my life work. That's called living a soul-directed life directed towards Christ, directed towards God. So I know that if I focus on gratitude and love and following the commands of the Lord, that there is a joy in that process that I will find. And I know as a stubborn person who loves doing things my way, that I have to go through the painful process of letting go and loosening my grip on control and letting the grace of the Lord operate in my life. What do you think? I'd like to know, how can you relate to what I'm saying in the comments? Are there areas of your life where you see benefit in letting go of control and allowing grace and God to operate? And in what ways can we take more responsibility for our lives? And instead of looking for life to do something for us, how can we look at, well, what can I do today? How can I be the grace that is needed in other people's lives? How can I be the love that is needed in other people's life? How can I serve today? God bless you all.